Wysteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and the world of fairies. We're going to continue where we left off. So we're now on Billy Winker, also known as the Dustman, Old Luck Oi, and Wee Willie Winky. Billy Winker was a nursery bogie who was called upon by mothers and nursemaids to induce sleep in children. He was from the Folklore of Lancaster, but elsewhere in England and in Scotland he was known as Wee Willie Winky. As Old Luck, he walked through the home very quietly in his stocking feet, and was otherwise said to be very well dressed, carrying an umbrella under each arm. His silk coat was blue, green or red, depending on which direction he was facing. He sprinkled a small amount of sand into children's eyes so they couldn't awake and see him. Then he breathes gently on their necks. For good children, he opens up his highly decorated umbrella and holds it over them all night long to ensure they have pleasant dreams. But for naughty children, he holds his plain umbrella over them, preventing them from having any dreams at all. Beloco. Its variation is Elokos. Beloco is a species of injurious dwarf from the folklore of Zari. They were described as having very large mouths and hair resembling grass. The fairy or nature spirits have enormous claws and wear clothes made of leaves. They live in hollow trees and wait for someone to pass by to attack. Although the word Beloco translates to literally mean object or thing, the fairy race of Beloco have become synonymous with the word bogeyman. Bilvis or Bilwis or the Pilvis. During the Middle Ages, Bilvis was a spirit from the fairy lore of Austria and Germany. Living in trees, this fairy was invoked to assist in curing illnesses. Originally a kindly wood fairy or nature spirit, Bilvis was demonized during the Middle Ages and described as having large sickles sticking out the tops of his toes. Said to plague humans by making crop circles called Bilvis's reapings, tying their hair into knots and spoiling the harvest. Bilvis was left small offerings to keep him away from children in the fields. In more modern times, he is looked upon as a type of bogey. Believed to live in trees, offerings of children's clothing were left for it, in the hopes of deterring him from spreading childhood diseases and illnesses. Birds of Rhiannon. The birds of Rhiannon were fairy animals of British folklore. Typically, their number was given as 3. These birds were wonderful musicians with the ability to sing the dead back to life, according to the Mabinogi. A warrior came upon the birds and was so enchanted by their song, he stopped and listened to them sing for 80 consecutive years. There are many different variations of that story, by the way, but that's just bite-sizing it. Bisan, a species of female nature spirits from the folklore of the Malay people of West Malaysia. The Bisan are the guardians of specifically the camphor-bearing trees, the Cinnamomum camphora. At night it makes a shrill cry, identical to the call of cicadas. Appearing to humans in the form of the cicada, these fairies must be approached using the correct method, such as speaking Bahasa Kapur, camphor language, sacrificing a white rooster, and leaving a small offering of food. While hunting for camphor-bearing trees, one must eat its trail rations without any form of condiment, or Bisan will be offended. Bistonis. Bistonis was a nymph from the mythology of classical Greece and Rome, one of the naiads. She was the mother of the cruel and wicked king of Thrace, Bivor the Tremulous, one of the dwarfs named in the Voluspa, like many of the others. Black Angus, also known as Kusith, the Barghest, guard dog. Quinn Anwen. A black Angus is a fairy hound from the folklore of England and Scotland. It's uncertain if this is a species of fairy animal or an individual being. Appearing as a large black dog with yellow glowing eyes and a mouthful of sharp teeth, it roams the countryside as a sort of death omen, as anyone who sees it will die within a fortnight. Reports of Black Angus sightings date far back to the 17th century. Black Anise. Black Anise is a blue-faced hag, well known in the Danehill region near Leicester, England. Described as having long claws and yellow fangs, this powerful fairy lives in a cave called by locals Black Anise. Bower legend has it she made the cave herself by hewing out the stone with her own talon-tipped fingers. Her antipathist is being named Gentle Anise. Black Anise catches children and lambs who linger in the Danehill near twilight, removing the skin from their bodies, devouring their flesh and scattering their bones over the land. As late as the 18th century, on Easter Monday, a dead cat soaked in aniseed was dragged past the opening of the Black Anise bower with a pack of hunting hounds in pursuit. It was hoped she would follow suit and be exposed to purifying sunlight. In modern times, she's considered to be a little more of a nursery bogey, although she's associated with sightings of monstrous cats and alien big cats. Black Dog. There are many different species of black dogs in fairy mythology, especially in the British Isles. And generally, these injurious fairy creatures are described as being a large and a fierce dog, typically with black coat. Its eyes are said to glow red or yellow, its mouth filled with vicious teeth. To see one or hear its howl is a death omen. Only a few rare stories exist of the black dog playing the role of guardian and protector. Black dogs patrol deserted roads, usually invisible, right up until the moment it attacks. Prior to that, only the clicking of its claws can be heard. Crossroads and midnight are also common additions to the black dog lore. In the British Isles, the black dog is shaggy and the size of a calf, while in German lore it is every bit as large, but its coat is more akin to that of a poodle's. Appearance and size differs only slightly from region to region. Black dogs are reported to some fashion or another throughout the whole world. Although travelling alone, it's never a good idea at night if fairy country having a companion offers no protection from the black dog, as one person may see and hear it while the other does not. According to legend, the best protection from one of these creatures is to travel with a descendant of Ian MacIndro of Loch Ewe, as he once reportedly saved the life of a fairy who in return gave him and his family line perpetual and eternal immunity from black dogs. Black Dwarf. Living under the coastal hills of the Isle of Rügen, Germany's largest island, the black dwarfs were said to plunder the jetsam and flotsam of the ships wrecked along the coastline. They kept to the hills and seldom ventured out into daylight. When they did, they travelled too far from their home. In summer months, they were known to sit under old trees. The black dwarfs did not dance or have any music to call their own. Injurious, malicious, and of foul disposition, the black dwarfs could hardly stand each other's company, seldom gathering in groups of more than 3 in number. They took pleasure in causing great mischief among mankind. Dressed in black capes and jackets and described as being exceedingly ugly, They were expert craftsmen when it came to steel. Their wares were always in high demand. It is said the swords of the Black Dwarfs were of unparalleled craftsmanship, bending like a willow yet as hard as a diamond. No corset or shield should withstand a blow from me, meaning one of the swords. The chainmail shirts, knitted by them, were as fine and delicate as a web of a spider. No bullet or sword could stand up against it. Black elf. Obviously, these are the Svart elves or the dark elf. The injurious black elves, Svadilvar, from Scandinavian fairy lore. We've already done about these. They are the old Norse myth, obviously, of the darker elves, the elves that are meant to be on the bad side, I suppose. But whether they are or not, that's your own opinion, you know. Black Shanglan. The Black Shanglan was a war horse, a favourite animal from Irish folklore, along with Woman Ruler. They lived invisibly inside their fairy fort. These two fairies came out only when it involves the freeing of Ireland in order to aid and comfort the people during a national uprising. Then we come to the Black Shuck. Now, the Black Shuck is again like the black dog, and it does roam lonely roads throughout England. Sightings of this sort of hellhound are still made periodically. Legends of him date back thousands of years to the time of the Viking invasions, and it's been speculated the Black Shuck was named after Shakir, the war dog of Odin and Thor. Although it is equally as possible it was derived from the local dialect word shucky, which means hairy or shaggy. The Blaine, or the Blaine, corpse blue, was possibly one of the dwarfs, one of the first of the dwarfs, and his funeral, which was held at the beginning of time, was mentioned in the Voluspa. The Blathnat, also known as the Blathnet, Blathmeat, Blathmat, Blamid, and Blathnad. So in Irish lore, it means little flower, was a Sihi woman, the foster daughter of Angus Og. Legends vary, but generally it was said Blathnat either eloped with the cultural hero, Chuchalane, or was abducted by him. She may have played a part in the looting of her father's burial mound, but if she did, it was not clear if she was willing to participate or not. The only consistent part of her story occurs when she betrays Chulain by revealing him the only way his rival could be slain was with his own sword. Once this information was given, Kuroi was then either killed while he slept or bathing. In the end, Blathnat neither rode off happily with Cuchulain or was slain. It does vary. There are many different stories regarding that, and they all have like differences in them as well. You know, you won't find one or two that are the same. Bloody Bones. Bloody Bones is a nursery bogey from the folklore of England and the United States of America, primarily. Ugly beyond description, with his bloody and raw flesh exposed, Bloody Bones and his companion Rawhead were often used as nursery bogies by parents to trick children into good behaviour, or for avoiding a certain activity or area, whichever was deemed appropriate. Blood. The variations of blood is Dickenpoten, Elict, and Will the Smith. In Slavic fairy lore, Bud, Wanderer, is an injurious fairy, causing disorientations much like the will-o'-the-wisp. It leads people aimlessly around. Blood was also the ancient Slavic word for illicit fornication. Blue Birches. Blue Birches is a hobgoblin from Somerset, England. Although known to take the shape of a small black pig, his true form is said to be an old man wearing baggy blue breeches. Considered to be harmless, he plays mild pranks, such as making the sound of heavy boots stomping down steps, or causing wisps of smoke to appear in the room. In one story, he took the form of an old white horse, who allowed itself to be bridled and ridden. Unfortunately, the rider was a person and took offence to the fairy and condemned it on the spot. Blue Breeches ran off into a duck pond with the person, although the person was not harmed. The hobgoblin was said to never ever be seen again. Blue cap or blue bonnet. Similar to a knocker, blue cap of northern England is a fairy who lives in mines. They either assist the miners or obviously they cause havoc for the miners. It depends on their mood and how they feel. The Blue Men of Minch, also known as Fealgorm, Fealgorma, and Storm Kelpies. In Scottish fairy lore, the Blue Men of the Minch cause ships to wreck by creating sudden and violent thunderstorms. They're most active in the winter months, but during the summer they are said to be seen swimming just below the water's surface. These blue-skinned fairies, possibly descended from seals, live in underwater caves between Long Island and the Shant Islands, an area known to sailors. And obviously, they do cause a lot of current and destruction in the water as well, it is said. Boan, variations Boand, Boanna, Boind, and the Bovin Indies are one of the two Atha de Deanon, meaning white cow, the river spirit of Boyne River in Ireland. She was born the daughter of Danu according to the 12th century document entitled History of Places. Boan was married to Nechtan, the guardian and owner of the Well of Wisdom. Forbidden to ever visit the well, Boan defiantly walked around it counterclockwise. This action caused the water in the well to react violently. The water churned up and engulfed her, transforming Boan into the river, which this day bears her name. That's interesting indeed. Can you imagine that happening? You end up becoming a river all of a sudden. What? Bogart. They have many other names. Boggart, Boggart Boogle, Boogie, Bogey, Bogeyman, Hobbers, Gobs, Hobgoblin, Goblins, Padfoot, Blobs. Originating in Celtic lore, a boggart is an injurious species of fairy. It adopts a family and causes havoc in their life, acting exactly like a poltergeist, eating the wool, tossing about the items in the kitchen, and meaning the butter. Some fairy lore says a boggart is created when a brownie or hobgoblin becomes insulted, transforming into an ugly-haired creature with sharp and nasty teeth. In modern times, the word boggart is a verb and it's used when meaning to steal, to take more than one's fair share, or to refuse to share. Bogeymen. Obviously, also known as bugbear, bugaboo, and bugbug. A bogeyman is any type of injurious fairy. While some are just slightly more than a minor nuisance, others can be deadly. Shapeshifters who cause disruptions and move objects about. A bogeyman usually attaches itself to and then consequently plagues a specific family. Their appearance is often vague and usually they are described as looking like nothing more than a puff of dust. The only known way to see a bogeyman is to look through a keyhole of a wooden door. If one is on the other side, you may be able to catch the gleam of its dull eyes. There are many regional stories of the local bogeyman carrying off naughty children. Usually, this being will not have a name. However, once this nursery bogey gains one, the fairy is then typically said to be a goblin. A bogle is a particular classification of the bogeyman, particularly evil, malicious, and obviously they specifically target liars and murderers. Bogey is a generic name for the various types of goblin and their temperaments. They could range from being like mild-tempered to murderous, basically. Bogle is known as the Boogle and Bougil. In Scottish fairy lore, the bogle is similar to a boggart and a bogeyman, having a foul disposition and taking extreme delight in frightening its victim. It is also said to be virtuous. Folklore says when dealing with this type of fairy, you must have the last word with it. Bookvus. Bookwus also. Wild man of the woods. A nature spirit found in the folklore of the Kawakitul tribe of Native Americans of Northwest America. Described as a skeletal being wearing fearsome war paint, it uses the sound of rushing water to mask its movement through the spruce wood forest. Then, sneaking up on unsuspecting fishermen, it pushes him into the water and tries to drown him. If he succeeds, Bogwurst captures his soul. If ever Bogwurst offers a person a piece of dried salmon, they should not accept it, as in truth it is actually a piece of dried tree bark. If it is eaten, it will transform the person into a ghost under his control. Bulby. Bulby was one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys. Ballina, a nymph of the town of the Ballina in Archaea, southern Greece. Ballina was pursued by the god Apollo in classical Greek mythology. She leapt into the sea to escape his pursuits and remains a virgin. Impressed with her virtue, the god bestowed the mantle of immortality upon her. Bola Dei, and also known as Bolotnie, kind of means swamp, and it's a female marsh fairy or nature spirit in Russian folklore. She's considered to be an injurious spirit. The Bombur, one of the dwarf lords and one of the many dwarfs named in the Voluspa. Bon Garacon, the Lutin, or goblin from the fairy lore of Normandy, was known by various names depending on the region and the shape. It assumes a different shape and place, a different shape, size, and meaning from wherever it goes. It can be a handsome young man, and it can be, an old man. It can be flattering, but it can be mean. So it has very much a wide range of variations. Bonga maidens. The Bonga maidens from the folklore of the Santhal people of India are said to be both beautiful and dangerous nature spirits. These fairies entice some married men only to ultimately leave them alone, haggard and palely loitering. When a bonga is not involved in a relationship, it plays injurious tricks on people. However, on occasions, it can reward a person with a gift, such as second sight, to those who have assisted it. The Boobrie. The Boobrie is a fairy bird from the Scottish Highlands, haunting lakes and saltwater wells. It's said to fly through the water. Its favourite food is cattle and sheep, and will attack any ship carrying them. The Boobrie mimics the sound of a calf or lamb in the hopes of luring an adult animal to the side of the ship. If successful, it will use its long talons to grab the animal and drag it underwater and drown it. When cows and sheep are not available, then usually it will eat otters. Booman. The Booman is a brownie-like hobgoblin from the Orkney and Shetland Islands. His name is sung in the funeral game called Shoot Booman Shoot, and Booman is dead and gone. In these songs, the singer mimes digging a grave. Gee, that's nice. Boomaso. So it's a hamadryad of classical Greek mythology. She's like a tree spirit or a gnat from Burmese folklore. They live in the root of trees. Baruta. Baruta, in Polish folklore, is a female nature spirit, similar to a dryad. She's said to inhabit and protect fir trees. Bostonis, one of the naiads from classical Greek mythology. Brag, a species of mischievous, ugly, shape-shifting goblins from the northern countries of England. It oftentimes shapeshifts into the form of a horse. If in its horse form, it's similar to a kelpie or a shellycoat, and the pulka of Ireland. Sir Cuthbert Sharp, in his book, The Bishopric Garland, 1834, describes the fairy Pictri Brag as a fantastic shapeshifter, taking numerous forms such as a calf with a bushy tail, wearing a white kerchief, 4 men holding a white sheet, headless naked man, and the shape of a Galloway. Some reports say when the brag cannot be seen, it can be heard. On these instances, it sounds like a coach being drawn by 6 horses. Brina. Celtic lore, the word Brina in Gaelic means fairy land. Brenin Lud, monarch of the mist. Welsh fairy lore, Brenin Lud, the Grey King, lives in the misty mountain tops of Snowdonia in northern Wales. although he has been placed in various mountain passes throughout the northern part of the country. Brooding, mighty and powerful, he waits for a lone traveller to cross his path. When they do, they're never seen again. He would quickly snatch up children too. Brisingamen dwarfs, also known as Brisingamen. Norse mythology. The Brisingamen dwarfs are Alfrig, Beling, Dalin, and Ger, the four grotesque dwarfs who forged the Brisingamen flaming ornament, the necklace, of course, of the goddess of Freya. Britomatis, also known as Dictania, born a daughter of Zeus, and Kami, the virgin nymph of the mountains, the gentle virgin, was a companion to the goddess Artemis, Diana, and one of the Oreads. She was the guardian of fishermen. She had attracted the unwanted attention of Minos, and fled from him for 9 months, escaping his clutches only by throwing herself in the sea and leaping off the ice of it. Rescued from the water by fishermen and their nets, she travelled to Aegina and came there to rest, changed her name to Aphaea. She was depicted as being surrounded by hunting dogs and is dressed as a hunter. Britomatis, a Cretan mother goddess. Britomatis became a nymph of the island of Crete in Greek mythology. Brock. The dwarf Brock is the brother of Eitri, a smith. Loki had wagered Brock, his brother, could not smith 3 items as wonderful as the golden hair of Freya, the ship Skiblad, and the spear Gungnir, as made by the dwarfs known as the sons of Invalida. The brothers took up the bet. Brock blew on the fire and worked the bellows to keep it hot. His brother Eitri went to work making the golden bow, the golden arm ring, and obviously the golden hammer. Bromi, a nymph from the mythical Mount Nisa. Bromi was a nurse to the infant god Dionysus in Greek mythology. Brother Mike. Brother Mike is a local fairy from the folklore of Suffolk, England. His name was called out in desperate cry for help by a fairy who had been captured by a local farmer. It's interesting indeed. The Brown Man of the Moors. The Brown Man of the Moors is a square and stout dwarf with red hair, wearing clothes made of bracken. He is a nature spirit and a guardian of the animals, living in the border country of Scotland, a strict vegetarian, surviving solely on apples, nuts, and whortleberries. The fairy is particularly injurious to those who hunt for sport and not for food. There are many stories. Usually it's a solitary fairy, although there is obviously stories regarding them being in groups, but only very small groups. And we're not going to do brownie because we have already done brownie. Brucie. Brucie is a French word, and translated it means forest spirits. Bruch. In Irish fairy lore, a bruch, fairy place, is a hill, natural or man-made, where a collection of fairies live. Many burial mounds are also considered to be bruch, especially if it is where the Tuatha De Danann are said to be buried. Very interesting indeed. Bruni, one of the many dwarfs named in the Voluspa. Brunissan. In French mythology, Brunissan, the brown one, was a fairy queen of Provence, an orphan who raised himself in the magical forest of Brocéliande. She grieved after the loss of her parents by crying for 7 continuous years. Only the sound of magical songbirds could ease her suffering, until Giflet, a knight of the Round Table, who had fallen into a magical sleep, drew her attention and she fell in love with him. Bryce. In Greek mythology, Bryce was a water nymph, one of the Danads, a collection of the daughters, obviously, Greek mythology. The Booker is basically, excuse me guys, the Cornish version of the Puck, obviously. It's sort of the same thing. There is no difference from the two, it's just they are called something different. And that's something that you find along the way, is that there are many different ones that they just have a different name, but they are the same things. The bugger. A bugger is a type of shape-shifting fairy in British folklore, similar to the brownie and goblin of Scotland. And when we were younger, if you were very British, they would call you a little bugger, and that's what it meant, the shape-shifting fairy, the little bugger. Bugger. At the foot of Greba Mountain, the Isle of Man, lies St. Trinian's Church. It has walls and a tower but no roof, and is said to be the injurious and malicious fairy Bugger tore it off in a fit of rage. Bugglenos. In Breton fairy mythology, Bugglenos, Night Shepherd, is a tall, alarming nature spirit living on the rural forests of Brittany. The last of his kind, this fairy is desperately lonely. He's so hideous and ugly, the animals of the woods avoid him and will flee when he approaches. Aware of his frightful visage, the gentle and kind Bugglenose is considered enough to call out as he wanders the woodlands during twilight, so he does not surprise or frighten anyone near or any animals near him. Bukura Edut, Albanian law. The beauty of the earth. It's a beautiful, crafty, and magic-wielding fairy queen, very epitome of happiness. The fairies of her court are capricious and unpredictable, sometimes beneficial and other times injurious. So they can change their tune with you it depends how they feel. Bukwas, a nature spirit of the Kawakitu people of Vancouver Island. It's like ape or man of the woods, lived deep within Pacific Northwest forest. He was most often sighted early in the morning along the seashore to gather cockles and shellfish. Described as having a hair-covered body with long arms and a broad chest. It walks with a loping gait. Oftentimes it whistles. If ever was presented food to a traveller, they should never eat it, as doing so will cause them to enter into the land of the dead. Buck was seen also as a spirit of death. Seeing him was considered to be a death omen. Bull beggar. Now, in Surrey, England, a bull beggar is said to be a nondescript hobgoblin or fairy spirit, generally frightening appearance. Assuming the form of an injured person, the bull beggar will lie on the road and wait for a good Samaritan to come along and help. When the person leans down to offer assistance, the bull beggar will spring up to its full height and assume its enormous and shadowy form. Wailing out, the fairy will chase the person, never catching them but frightening them all the same until they reach safety. Less dramatic, but just as frightening, the bull beggar will stalk behind a traveller, becoming a vague black shadow, and make the sound of footfalls. Bumber, one of the many dwarfs named in the Voluspa. The bunyip, an Australian fairy creature standing only about 4 foot tall. The shy and seldom seen bunyip, devil or spirit, looks like a small, plump human with a backward-facing feet. Living in lakes, rivers, and swamplands, these mud-covered fairies will bark out a warning of danger if near, although there are some stories in which it will attack anyone who enters into its territory. The first sighting of the bunyip came in the New South Wales area in 1800 and continued on into the 20th century. It's believed by the Aboriginal Lakes Bathurst and George are sacred to the bunyip. However, after a dam was built across the Murray River in the 1920s and 30s, sightings of the bunyip all but stopped. Although most native bunyip drawings depict the fairy animal in a wide array of shapes and sizes, most often shows it has flippers, walrus-like tusk, a horse-like tail, and it's been speculated the bunyip was nothing more than a fur seal. Buddy, the son of one of the many dwarfs named in the Voluspa. Buschfrauen, a German nymph-like nature spirit. They live commonly in the hollows of trees, but they only appear alone, standing a little taller than a dwarf. They have golden hair and are most likely seen when bread is baking. I wonder why that is, when bread is baking. The Bwaganod. In Welsh fairy lore, the Bwaganod is very similar to the Scottish brownie. It's a domesticated fairy that will obviously help around the house. The Bwbach is a good-natured Welsh household fairy, very similar to the brownie again. It's just got a very different name, but they are brownie-like beings who will help around the house. Obviously, do not give them clothing, because then they will no longer help. Byblis, a nymph of Ionia. She was in love with her twin brother, Cornus, but when her feelings were not reciprocated, she threw herself off a cliff in an attempt to commit suicide. She was saved from death when the local nymph transmuted the falling Byblis into a nymph. Still grieving, a constant flow of tears transformed her into a fountain. Baise, the naiad of the river Erisinos in Argos in classical Greek mythology. Oh, Baisia. Baisia was one of the naiads, and she was said to have raised Bysas, the founder of Byzantine. And that is all the bees finished in our fairy journey of fairies all over the world. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Please hit that like, share if you can, and also consider subscribing if you've not. I would love if you would leave a comment down below also. And many
Wysteria, energy, twister.